Howdy folks. Today we have this New Zealand made Rockit, sorry there's a truck going by, Rockit Super Sustain 130. This looks like an amazing little amp. I picked this up on eBay. Now I have done another Rockit amp quite a little while ago. It was a customer's, and this one I ended up buying it because a couple of reasons. One, it's pretty rare here in Australia. Pretty rare in New Zealand too. Famous amp builder. I'm going to try to remember to put a description in the link below on where you can find information on this. Picked it up a little while ago now, probably over a month ago. It is not working at the moment. There are no tubes in it. It's kind of based on the Music Man sort of like RD130, I think. In the way that it's basically what it has is a solid state preamp and 4 6L6s in the power amp. You have a input here and foot switch. I believe the foot switch probably does either channel switching. There's a drive channel. Well, actually, I don't know. There's a bright and a boost. Maybe the foot switch turns a boost on. I don't know anything about this amp, but you got a drive. So that would be your input gain. Sustain level, I don't know. Maybe that's your, I don't know. We're going to find out together. Then volume. So maybe that's your normal channel, that's your boost channel, I don't know. Then you got your bass, middle, treble. So standard sort of 3. That's a bit loose there. That's not turning a pot at all. So that screw, the grub screw in here is probably just loose. That one's fine, and you got a reverb. Now I think it does have a tank, so it's a real reverb. And then you got your master volume. Now I'm going to flick this around and we're going to have a look at the back of it. Little stain right there, looks like a bit of wax or something. We're going to clean that up, but otherwise the amp is in really good condition. Tiny little bit of Tolex sticking up there, but not a big deal. I've seen much worse. Also got this grill cloth on the front, this basket weave, sort of more akin to your boogie, your Mesa boogie type of stuff. The amp that I did for the customer a little while ago was very much a Mesa boogie style, where it had the little the sliders for the EQ settings. I'll put a link in the description to that amplifier. But let's flick this big heavy beast around and look at the back panel. So we let's see if I can get focused in here. We go. Now a bit more Tolex sticking up here. That's not a big deal. That's probably just ripped out when someone tried to rip the amp out. I will say it is a heavy amp. The transformers hanging down in here are bigger than my fist. We'll look at those in a second. They're enormous. Both the power and the output transformer are freaking huge. Now we got power on off, I believe. Yep, there we go. Mains on off. Standby on off. Okay, it is a 240 volt. Let's see if I can see that. 220, 240 volt mains. Okay, what sort of fuse does it take? Let's see if we can read that. Power cord's right in the way. Looks like a 2 amp, maybe? 2 amp fuse, so we'll make sure the fuse in there is the right one. Now, the thing I like about this, now this is great for guitarists. You got a 75 watt setting, which basically, if I remember correctly, the Music Man that I fixed, well, no, sorry, the Rockit that I fixed that was based off the Mesa amp, that also had a 1/2 watt thing. I believe, if I remember correctly, and basically what it does, and also, oh, by the way, I also remember doing, I think I did repair an RD130 for another customer, and it had the 1/2 watt switch. What I noticed it did is when I flicked it to half the power, and that's about half the power, you know, roughly, 75 is nearly half of 130. What I found was that the tubes, and you can see there's no tubes in here, and we're also going to look at those tube sockets as well, because one of them's been replaced. which is why I'm not going to turn this amp on until I've looked at it. But basically what I noticed was on the other amps, when you flicked it to half watt, the tube heaters glowed half as brightly. So what I'm thinking is this half watt switch, and we'll open it up and have a look and determine whether it's doing this or not, but it looked like the half watt switch basically just shunted the transformer to only put out half the voltage. Could be right, could be wrong. We'll find out as we go. So there's a sticker next to this here, which obviously means it's been serviced somewhere, and that somewhere is Custom Music Centre, 183 Henley Beach Road, Torrensville, and it says 5031. The phone number does not have a 9 in front of it, which means it was last serviced, possibly, you know, we're only assuming here, it was last serviced somewhere when did the 9s come in? I'm going to say over 20 years ago. Okay, so who knows what's happened since then. We've got the power cord in here. Let's frame things correctly. Nice long power cord. I do love that. Someone's had a go at painting the insides. Good on them. But I will say, I do like the fact that you can plug this into a power board, and guess what? You can plug something else in. That's nice. I do like that. That's handy. It's pretty dark in here, but just to creep in, you can see the reverb tank stuck deep down in there. You can see some really old can caps. There's one on that side, and I don't see one on that side, but it's too dark to have a proper look. The giant output transformer. That output transformer looks like it's nearly twice the size of my Basement 50 output transformer. And the power transformer on this side, big. This thing weighs a freaking ton, let me tell you that. Anyway, let's move along the back panel here. So manufactured by Clef Industries. Now I was just in New Zealand for a little holiday, and I didn't think to check this place out or go here. It is a PO box, but I could have maybe found out. Now, next to that, and the final part here of the back panel, we have our main speaker output, and extension speaker output, and a 4 ohm 8 ohm switch. That's probably the handiest part of this amp for me. Having an old Basement 50, it's only got a 4 ohm output, so any cabinet I plug into it has to be 4 ohm. I know people talk about plugging in 8 ohm cabinets and stuff like that, or 16 ohm even, to, you know, but I'm a firm believer that when you do that, the flyback voltages and currents that are going back into the output tubes, because you have to remember, an output transformer, and I'm sorry about the dark exposure in here, an output transformer, you know, it works both ways, and that's why you need to always impedance match when you're playing around with tube amps. Alrighty folks, so I have the chassis out here, and we're just going to run through and go from the power side and go towards the preamp side. So we're going to have a look here, and we're going to discover some things. I've already had a bit of a quick look through, just because it makes things easier to just look through eye to eye instead of eye through camera through the board. It makes it a lot harder. There's some things here that concern me, which I'm going to fix or attempt to fix. I'll find out a bit more about this thing and see how far we get into repairs. So the first thing, these caps here are just wobbling around. This bank of resistors here, look at that. That's not even mounted to anything. Okay, there is a rivet or a screw on this side, but big deal. That's pretty shit. That's quite dangerous actually. If that moves around or breaks or does something, you're screwed. I know that this side, the negative side of this capacitor here, is mounted to the old capacitor, which also makes me think that perhaps, well, the can caps under here, which are this one and this one, might be stuffed, but they're still wired in. They're still wired in. So they've gone and replaced the can caps with these. That's what it looks like to me based on what I can see here. But they've left these can caps in there. So I'm gonna try to test all these and see if they're within spec. This bank of resistors here, this is horrible. This is just nasty. So shit repair job here, really half-assed. The next thing I notice, okay, so power section here. Okay, now there's another can cap here, a big one. What I noticed is, and if I can see this, let's see if I can get right in there. Now you see this? Now there used to be a wire there. It's red. Not anymore. Where does it go? Who knows? It could be one of these caps. Could be part of this section here. I don't know. I really don't know. So there's going to be a bit of mystery solving with this amplifier. Okay, so the next thing I found. Now this diode here's been replaced because you can see the old terminal sticking up out of the board, and it's just been cut, and a new diode has been soldered in. No J hooks, no nothing, just straight in. Same as this capacitor right here too. Look at that terminal. No J hook, no nothing, just straight in and hovering above the board. So I can see why this thing probably doesn't work. There's that resistor here that looks fairly worn out, fairly heated up. Probably something to do with the fact that these old leaky caps that are still wired into the circuit have something to do with that. So that's going to get fixed. Now let's keep moving here. There's another capacitor here, which does not look like it's got a J hook on it either, and it's hovering above the board. There's a resistor here, like I can see another wire going in under there. That's pretty crap as well. The rest of this board looks pretty standard. Yep, another capacitor here that's been changed. Look at that, garbage. And the rest of this looks okay. I don't see any burns. I don't see any bits and pieces. And here's the preamp board for the drive side. This looks like the preamp section for the clean side. Again, I'm assuming, like I said, I don't know anything about this amp. We're discovering it together. There's your input sockets right there. Okay, so you can see, here we go. So, well, input socket is this one here, and that goes straight into the drive board, and then comes out of the drive board and goes into this side, into the preamp board. And then we have the foot switch cable, which runs along all the way to here and goes to here. I assume, again, the foot switch probably, maybe puts in or takes out these preamp ICs here. Again, look, we're just assuming here. So let's see what we come up with. All right, so heading down to the phase inverter section. For starters, there's a mess of resistors just sitting here. I'm going to assume that this is a repair because, as you can see, there's really not, I mean, apart from these resistors here, these guys here, 1k ohm each, so it looks like maybe, what are they going to, pin 6? No, pin 4 of 6L6s. I'm going to have to look up what that is. So pin, what's that say? These sockets don't have pin numbers on them. That one does. This, oh no, it does. Sorry, my mistake. Just really hard to see. So if we go down here, let's see, socket 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, pin 4. And that's going to pin 4. And then this one's going to pin 4, 5. Hang on. 5, 4. Yeah, it looks like a 4. So pin 4. We'll have a look and see what pin 4 is supposed to be. I think, if I remember correctly, pin 4 is the grid. Anyway, looking here, there's some minor repairs have been done without taking the board out. So these resistors right here, they should be underneath the board, which is on top of the board. This capacitor, I can see why it's up on top here, but considering all the other caps that have been changed, I'm going to assume it should be underneath the board as well. There's this here, again, different brand of cap as well. So, you know, and this and they're just floating here. They're just floating. They're just, you know, and this thing here, this resistor, capacitor, sorry. Yeah, this resistor right here, and then this group right here of crap. So I'm gonna see if I can find some sort of schematic for this. It might be difficult because what I've just noticed over here, and it's going to be upside down, but it says 11th of the 5th, 1979. So this is a 1979 model amplifier, which is kind of cool actually. And it says 240 volt, I believe, 240 V, AN, maybe Australian, maybe that's what that means instead of AU. And then there's AC or AO, I can't quite make that out. But 1979, so 11th of the 5th. Now, we're in Australia here, so we put the day first, then the month, and same as New Zealand, and then the year. So it's the 11th of May, 1979. That's kind of cool, knowing the exact date it was made. Now, what I'm going to do, because it's unlikely to find a schematic of this thing online, I'm going to look though. But if I don't find a schematic online, I'm going to try to see if I can get in touch with the person who built it. They might still be alive, or get in touch with someone who may work on these or repair these in New Zealand and find out if I can get a schematic or something, or a photo of the inside of one would be amazing as well, because then I'll be able to tell if these are original or not. I reckon the can caps are. So I'm almost tempted to cut all this out. Well, not that. Cut this out, and put in a brand new set of can caps, and see how we go. Also, with this newer socket on this side, this last 6L6, you can see the rest of these sockets are all the same, except for this one. I'm going to make sure that's wired correctly as well before I do anything with this. It's also worth, now amps like this, or any tube amp for that matter, it is worth turning them on, preferably on a variac, and sticking your multimeter probes into the valve sockets or on top here or whatever you like, and just measuring things. Measure the plate voltages, see if there's a negative bias, because there should be. There should be a negative bias here of some description. Now, I don't see a pot or anything like that, so that tells me that maybe it's a fixed negative bias. And when I mean fixed, I mean really fixed, like not fender fixed. Or it could be that these are cathode biased. We'll have to have a look. Although, what's the cathode on a 6L6? Pin 8, isn't it? So pin 8 comes off here, goes this white wire. This white wire goes to the transformer. So that looks like it's probably coming off a tap of the transformer. Although, the white wire is twisted, and then the black and yellow are coming off and going, is that heater instead? Oh, look, I'll have to have a look at the pins and stuff like that to figure it out. But we're sort of working our way through it. And so, yeah, what I was going to say is that when you are working on an amp like this and you are going to turn it on, first of all, do it on a variac or some sort of load resistor, like a light bulb. What's worth looking at as well is, so measure the plate voltages, make sure they're within spec. You're looking at something like this, probably about between 400 to 500 volts on the plates. And then you want to look at your negative bias, which you should be expecting somewhere between like negative 35 or 40 up to like negative 65 volts. Okay, so that's kind of what you're looking at. And if you look at just those two things, even if you don't look at anything else and look at just those two things, you will have automatically increased the safety of this amp when you put valves in and you turn it on, and you're not gonna sacrifice your output transformer, you're not gonna sacrifice your valves. Now, I do have a set of sacrificial valves, which I am gonna use. That's just a little thing to note down for everyone else. I'm gonna do some research, see what I find. And we're back. Did a little bit of research, did a little bit of digging around. I even found a amp and PA hire company in New Zealand where the owner is related to the person who built this. I think it was his dad. Had a chat to him for a few minutes, and it turns out a lot of schematics were permanently deleted. And by that I mean they were burnt. His father got rid of everything because people were stealing his schematics and copying them. So, looking at the amp now, I did find a schematic online, and I'm going to email it to the guy because he was very helpful, and I'm just going to sort of go through and see what I found so far. So this 470 ohm resistor here is connected to nothing. This terminal on this side goes nowhere, and I found where it should go. So I've done a little bit of tracing, and what happens is the two yellow wires coming out of the power transformer go here. They're connected by diodes that go to this point here. Now ignore this little Y section here where it spreads out. That goes somewhere else. I don't care about that right now. But the two diodes sort of have like a half-wave rectification, okay? And I'm going to show you that on the schematic as well in a moment. And then they travel up this line that heads towards the negative side of this electrolytic. And then this red wire, not the one here, but the one on the right, comes out and it goes here to the third lug of this filter cap. Where it should go, where this wire should go, is to this point right here, and then come out of there and then go to the standby switch, which is what it does. There's a whole bunch of extra wires on this standby switch, and there shouldn't be. This amp has been just butchered, okay? So what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is unsolder this wire right here, and I'm going to reconnect it back to this 470 ohm resistor. That's step one. The other thing I found is all these resistors here, they are complete bullshit. We're going to get rid of these, okay? There should be some resistors there, but not these ones. And I don't believe this is factory standard here anyway. So we're going to clean all this up. We're going to get rid of these caps. I'm going to order some JJ caps that are going to replace this, and this 3 filter cap can here with 3 caps in it. Look, I'm going to splurge and I'm going to find a filter cap that's going to replace that. I want this thing back to factory. It may or may not be worth the money, but I don't really care. I want this amp back to standard. That's the first thing we're going to do, and then we're going to work on the other little bits that are easier to find, like replacing that resistor, fixing this diode so I can get rid of these stupid terminals sticking up, and actually take this board out and fix this properly. Okay. The other thing as well is I've discovered this capacitor here should be there, that's fine, and these resistors here are fine, that's factory. All this stuff isn't, this stuff isn't. I haven't found a circuit diagram for this, and this stuff up here, well, I mean, that resistor's burnt, that one looks pretty black, it should be brown, and look, those bits I don't care about just yet, okay? The important thing is getting this power supply back to standard again, so we know we have a clean power supply to work with. Now let's have a look. I'm going to zoom in on my phone here and see if we can see if I can hold a steady hand. Now we can see here the yellow and yellow, okay, and green there goes to ground, right? So the two yellows, okay, yellow comes here, yellow comes here. You can see there's 2 diodes, and then it joins together and it jumps across here. And one side goes, oh, my phone turned off. Let's open that back up again. Okay. You can see one side here goes to pin 1 of our capacitor here. So pin 1. Okay, that's this side here. Okay, the bit that's cut off, we're going to fix that too, because, let's have a look here, okay, pin 1, so one of it goes to pin 1, the other side goes to that 470 ohm resistor, and then to the standby switch. So we're going to fix that up and wire that correctly. Pin 2 on that cap goes up here, goes through some of the circuit and connects to the brown and brown through a couple of diodes, and it also branches off up here and goes to the 4.7k 3 watt resistor. What I'm thinking is each one of these is 1k. What they've done is put them in series, I think, without looking, and I think what they've done is made a 4k resistor, okay, which is this wire here. And if we follow that, it goes up here, and then we follow it underneath the circuit board, and it should come out where this brown wire is here. Now, where's the other brown wire? I don't know. So we're going to kind of go through and figure that out as the next step. Let me focus this in a lot better. There we go. So we're starting to sort of build a picture here of what this should be. Now that brown wire, yeah, so it should go through a 4.7K resistor. I'm going to replace this ugly thing here. I'm going to cut this out completely. We're going to put in a single 4K resistor, a 5-watt one, even though it says 3-watt here. And that's going to fix up this section here. I'm also going to spend time measuring the 220K resistors here, which are already in situ. Okay, and I'm also going to test these caps out that are sitting here, these can caps. And hopefully I don't need to replace them. But the fact that there's these two abortions here, I'm going to remove those as well. We're just going to clean and tidy this thing up and get it back to standard. This is turning into quite an epic little amplifier to restore. Not as easy as just, oh yeah, let's just change a couple of resistors and maybe some caps and put new valves in it and off we go. We're having to reverse engineer some of this. Luckily, I found this schematic, and like I said, I am going to message the owner of the company that still has the rights to this, because it is his dad's and he took over his dad's business, and I'm pretty stoked that I found something that can help me with this. And it is a, let's go down here, a Rockit Super Sustain 130. So there's enough here for me to play with and figure out. And I believe besides that, the rest of the amp, even those bits and pieces that are butchered, like this down here, this here is a mess. This, you know, again, what's that, a 220 something? Yep, that's a mess. 220K maybe. There's little bits and pieces here where it just goes to show you there's little mods and an amateur hour where things, you know, even this yellow wire here, and then it's soldered to a blue wire, and then it goes to the output transformer. Now, I know generally with output transformers, you'll have a brown and another color, usually brown and blue. So that what they've done is one side of this push-pull is yellow, and the other side of this push-pull, which we can see here, is blue. Anyway, I'm going to order some parts, and the next time you see this, I'm crossing my fingers. All this is cleaned up, tidied up, and put back to standard. All right, ladies and gentlemen, parts have arrived, and we're going to put these in. So I didn't look to see if these mounts here are going to match the existing rivet holes there. So these have all been riveted in, so we're going to have to do some drilling. I've got 4 new valve sockets, and we're going to replace 1, 2, 3, 4. These 3 here did not fit properly, and when you look at them, they're cracked. Let me see if I can get in here. You can see a crack right down the bottom here. See that there? Okay, they're cracked. They're actually swollen. These are plastic and they've melted. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the top and work my way down, but I find it more comfortable working this way than crouching down over the amp, bending my back. And the power supply has now been fixed up properly, so power comes into the transformer, comes out, goes into the circuit board. There's a row of diodes here, but the main power supply comes out of here and goes to these caps through the standby switch, comes back out, then goes to these caps. The rest of this stuff appears okay. Now these 1 kilo ohm resistors that are here, they are not in the schematic. I think it's what have we got in the schematic here? Let me see if I can find the schematic. They're supposed to be 47K resistors. So if we look up here, it's these 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're supposed to be 47K, except they're not. Okay, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but we will figure it out. If the amp sounds like garbage, we will bring it back to stock. It's easy enough to get some nice 2-watt 47K resistors. They're a couple of cents each.
But we're getting the amp working and working reliably. Alrighty, so I'm halfway through. I just thought I'd show you progress so far. So basically, I've just popped out some of the old sockets here. They are plastic. They are plastic. Plastic sockets on a valve amp. So I'm not sure if these were original or that's original. Now that's a ceramic one, but that's the only valve socket where a valve actually fits in. 6L6s, and I tried 6V6s as well. I just tried different valves just in case, because I was like, you know, maybe my valves are faulty. Maybe the bases have expanded. Maybe something went wrong. No, these went wrong. They're plastic. I don't suspect that these are what would have been put in standard. I know these amps, they are super high quality. They're built really well. So I'm going to assume this is an original socket, and these ones, these three, are replacements. So I'm going to go ahead and wire two of them in now, and I've already drilled out the rivets. Now I just need to unsolder these ones and pop the brand new ones in. Now, however, nothing is ever that easy, and that's okay because I was expecting this. It's not unexpected. Basically, if I can get some of these plastic shrapnel out of the way. So, new valve socket. Great. Let me see if I can do this. Doesn't fit in the hole, does it? Okay, so we need to enlarge the hole by only 1 millimeter. And that's where I'm using one of these, a stepper drill bit. These are great. Now, you can use a punch as well. Okay, that works too. But these work great as well, nice and easy. So I'll basically just pop it in there with my drill, which is sitting right here next to my pinky, and I'll just gently. I made sure that the holes here that are going to mount the new valve sockets on, I made sure that that they're gonna fit properly. The other thing I'm going to try is I'm going to see if these fit. No, they don't fit this way either. Okay, so either way, it's going to have to be enlarged. The other thing is you don't necessarily have to put these on a certain way. Like, I can put these in from underneath the chassis, so they're basically not sticking up very far. Okay, let me frame this properly. So what I'll show. Actually, what I'll do, I'll enlarge the hole, and then I'll show you what I mean. Alrighty, so I've enlarged both these holes. Now, what I'm talking about, and I haven't enlarged them more than necessary. So it's actually not going to fit on this side. But what I was talking about before is if you put the valve sockets in from the top, which is cool. Now what's going to happen? And let me try this hole. Let's see if it's a bit bigger. Now it's not going to fit. That's okay. But you get the idea. What it's going to do is the chassis is going to come up to here where my thumb is. Okay, and that's cool. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I put this in from the inside of the chassis, you kind of get the idea. See how it's pretty much almost flush? It is going to stick out a couple of mils, and I'm just trying to... There we go. Now, doesn't that look neater? That's going to make the valve sit a couple of mils lower. I'm going to leave that one in there because I'm going to mount this. That's going to connect up to there. That's cool. And I'm going to do the same with the next one here, and I'm going to solder them in place. Now, the reason I'm soldering them in place is because then I can look at these two. Now, I did take photos, but I'm going to look at these two and then wire them exactly the same way, but like that, okay? So that's the way they should be wired. The other reason I'm doing that is because there's a whole bunch of zip ties and stuff along the chassis on the inside here, and it's holding these wires up. Now, if I took out all of this, all those wires would fall down, making my life more difficult. So, next time you see this, all 4 valve sockets are going to be brand spanking new. Alrighty, folks. Well, the new tube sockets are in. So, wired all up. Now, I haven't tested these yet, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to check everything. I'm going to compare them to my photos I took. I'm going to make sure these wires are all going to the right spots before I turn anything on. Then, I'm going to test exactly like I tested before, where I'm going to test the pins, each pin on each socket, because I've done every single one. I want to make sure that I'm getting plate voltage where I'm supposed to get plate voltage, which is pin 3. I'm going to be checking pin 3, sorry. Heater voltages. I'm going to be checking grid voltages, negative bias, and heaters. I think I already said heaters on every single one. And they have to match, or, plus or minus 1 to 5 volts. But the idea is that you make sure that each pin on each socket is identical. You don't want to put in pin 3 here and then go 200 volts, and then pin 3 here you go 600 volts, and then you don't want to do that. What I'm going to do now is grab my multimeter, check for shorts. Then I'm going to turn this on, watch for smoke, and then I'm going to get my multimeter out and measure some high voltages, heater voltages, bias voltages. And then if all that is good and I'm happy, then we're finally going to stick some sacrificial tubes in here. I need to see the plate voltages come down under load. I need to see all that stuff. And obviously I don't want to see smoke. All right, ladies and gents, crunch time. Here we are. I've got the amp on. I've checked for shorts. That's all cool. I've got the standby on right now. So I've just got power on. Power lights on. We can see that. And I checked the heaters already. Now, I'm getting 6.3 volts on all the heaters. I won't bother showing you that. What I want to show you the next step, like I said, before you put tubes in, as you can see, there are no tubes in these sockets. Okay, so flick standby on. So the amp is now fully functional, high voltage, one hand in the amp only, never put two hands in. We got 500-600 volts playing around in here, so be freaking careful. First thing I'm going to do is check the plates on every single socket. So here's pin 3, and we can look there, 538 volts. Next pin, 540, close enough. Next pin, this one here hiding under the heater wire, 538, close enough. And finally, the very top here, 540. Okay, we have plates. Next thing we're going to do is check the grid voltage, which would be about roughly about 100 volts less. 428. So this is pin 4. Okay. Same with this socket. Whoops. Let me put that back on. Okay. 430, 431, whatever. Close enough. Okay. Socket 3, 430. And the final socket. Let's get a good connection here. 430. So far we've checked heaters are in the right pin. Plate voltages are on the right pin. Correct pin. Pin 3 on each socket. Grid voltages, okay, are all on pin 4. Now we're going to check for negative bias. Okay, so this is the white wire here, pin 5. And let's be very careful about how we attach our multimeter. So minus 42 volts. Then we're going to check the next pin. Minus 42 volts. Check the next pin. Minus 42 volts. Okay, and check the next one. Ooh, let me get a good solid minus 42 volts. I am now satisfied that this amp is safe to plug some tubes in. I've got negative bias, I've got plate voltage, and I've got grid voltage. And they all seem to be, happy. They all seem to be happy. So the next thing we're going to do is throw some tubes in here and see what happens. All right, folks, you'll have to excuse the lighting. I had to run out and do some errands after I did the valve sockets here. But I did notice a problem with the amplifier when I left. And it's a big problem, and I'm hoping I can fix this problem quickly. The problem is that the amp is turned off. See? Off, off. But the valves, the heaters are on, and so's the power indicator on the front. And I thought, hang on a second. So I've come home now. I'm not going to work on this tonight, but because I want to sleep easy, I thought I'm just going to have a quick look and see what I can think of. Now, if I look at this power cable coming out of the wall socket into here, we got green ground, that's easy. We've got red, which is active, and that's going into this fuse. And we got, let's call it 240 volts. That's our mains voltage. my multimeter is set to AC. So then that wire goes to here, which again, 239, 238, whatever. And then I go to this switch here. Now the switch is in the off position, remember? I'm still getting 240 volts. I shouldn't be getting anything on this side of the amplifier, except I am. So this switch is faulty. We have to replace it. All right, got my fancy new switch. Let's plug everything back in and test it out. Check it out. No light. That's a good sign. All right, so here's the switch. Flicked it on. Now the power's on. Now the heaters are heating up. Now let's see if I turn that off. Will the heaters go out? Look at that. The heaters go out. Sorry about the focus there. The lighting in is poor. That's why I mainly work on this stuff during the day. Anyway, guess what? The next thing we're going to do now that we have the amp turning on and off safely, turning on and off standby safely, now we're going to check the bias. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Right, so with the amp turned off right now, I'm going to start measuring the bias. So the first thing I need to do with the amp turned off is I'm going to measure the resistance of each side of the push-pull. Now, this is a 4-valve power stage. So 2 of these valves will be the pull or push, and the other side will be the opposite. So if this side's push, this side's pull, okay? And what you'll find generally is, let me just have a look here. See this yellow wire that is now blue here? That goes to one side of our primary of our output transformer. And see this other blue wire? That comes down here and it connects to the same pin. Okay, so here are our 4 valves. These are our 2 that the output transformer is connecting to. The yellow wire on this side on pin 1, 2, 3, which is the plate. And the blue wire on this side, which is also blue wire, blue wire, blue wire. Confusing, I know. On pin 3 on the plate. So I'm going to measure the resistance of both sides and write these down. I've got my multimeter probes connected up to the center tap, which is on the standby switch. Okay, and I've flicked it on and off and it's made no difference to the resistance. That's good. And I've got the other end, the other probe of my multimeter connected to the one side of the output transformer primary. I'm getting 13 let's call it 13.2. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to write resistance. So left-hand side, 13.2. Quite a low resistance. Then I'm going to leave my probe on the center tap. I'm going to take this probe off pin 3 of the push or pull side, and I'm going to put it to pin 3 on this side, which is going to be difficult because there's some wires in the way. There we go. Wow, look at that transformer, 10.9. Hey? Wow, that's really unbalanced, isn't it? 10.9. That's okay. Next, while I'm here connected to this like this, I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to turn the amp on, let the tubes warm up. I'm going to change my multimeter from resistance to volts DC, and I probably only need to put it to 2, but I'm going to put it to 20. Righto, so with the multimeter still connected to the center tap of the primary output transformer, that's my high tension. That's my 500 some odd plate voltage, and I've still got my probe delicately connected to the plate. So what I'm going to do now is I've set my multimeter to volts DC and I've set it to 20 volts DC. I'm going to flick the amp on and I'm going to measure the voltage drop. So we're getting 0.75, 0.76. Let's turn that off. Let's take our probe and go, whoops. Okay, let's try the other side. And what do we get there? 0.9. Oh, hang on. No, Steph, we don't want that. We want, hang on. Sorry, guys. I had a signal going through. I was wondering, I could hear the signal coming through. So let's try this again. Okay. So amp is on. I'm getting a voltage drop of 0.93. So 0.93 on the left. And let's turn the amp off. I forgot what I measured on this side. I could look back at the video, or I could just put my alligator clips on here and measure again. Nothing shorting out, and we're getting 0.74. So 0.74. We're going to put that in. Okay, let's turn the amp off again. Right, now the final piece of the puzzle, we're going to measure the plate voltage. So I can leave that probe there, and I'm just putting, whoa, that's gotten dark. Sorry guys, trying to do this one-handed. Now I've just moved my probe, the probe I had on the center tap is now on ground. So I'm going to change my multimeter to 1000 volts DC. And now we're going to measure the plate voltage. So there we have 521 on the right hand side. Let's turn that off and write that down here. Let's swap our probe from this side of the push-pull to this side of the push-pull. See if we can get it to stay there. There we go. And we're going to turn that side on, and we get 520, 521. So it's about the same. Okay. Let's turn the amp off. So 521. Now, what we can see here is my bias calculator, and we're only looking at this part of the bias calculator. Okay. So what we have here, now remember, you've got, okay, so plate current, 70 milliamp on one side, 67 on the other. Okay, the important thing to remember is you got to divide this by 2 because there's 2 valves on each side. So if you divide, and then what we get here is a percentage, 146 and 141. Look, that's about close to 70%. So you divide that by 2, you get about 140. 14 divided by 2 is 70. All right, so the final bit of mathematics I have to do, not only do you have to chop these numbers in half, this is the plate current. The calculated plate dissipation, if you look here, is 36.7 watts and 35.3. They're closely matched, even though these two sides of the output transformer are not. So if we look at 36 and 35, we go up here to 6L6s. You got 30 watts per tube. 21 watts is 70%. Now remember, there's 2 tubes per side. So then divide this by half again. So 36 divided by 2, what's that, about 17? 18? 18. 8 and 8, 16. Yeah, 18. And this one's about 17.5 or something. So well within specs. It looks like it's roughly biased at about 55 to 60%. And if we look down here, we can see, let me get in closer, my percentage on the left-hand side, sorry. You can see the percentage on the left-hand side, 122.3%, and the right-hand side, 117%. Now, remember again, you divide by 2 because we have 2 tubes per side. So 122, you divide that by 2 is about 61%. And on this side, you're looking at a what, 50, I don't know, 58, 59, something like that. 58.5, 58.6. So look, well within specifications. The bias is fine. I'm not going to touch this amp except for disconnect my probes out of here and turn my multimeter off. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this amp on. Let's turn the master volume all the way up. I'm going to turn the input side on, and I'm going to see what's going on next with this amp, because I'm adjusting the volume. Nothing's happening to the volume here. I adjust the level here. It's a bit crackly, but it's not adjusting the volume. If I go to the other channel, it's louder. That works just fine. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Hang on. Oh, hang on. I see. You got the drive and sustain channel doing separate things. And then you've... okay, now I know how this amp works. Right. Okay. Nope, that's working just fine. Alrighty, so I figured out the thing. The foot switch is required in order to make this sustain channel work. Otherwise, it's basically just this basic EQ with the reverb and the master volume there. So I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to take out my sacrificial valves and I'm going to put in 4 brand new 6L6s. And I'm going to remeasure the bias anyway. You don't need to see that. I'm going to clean up my mess that I've made down here in the chassis. I'm going to put it back in the cabinet. And the next thing I'm going to do after that is play the frickin' thing. All right, just a final little video just to, I'm going to edit this properly later. But basically, I've gone and changed the negative bias cap here. Alright folks, well basically that's a wrap up for this video. I'm gonna have a jam with this in a second. In fact, I already had a jam with it. I found some problems. I thought I'd come back to it and do this part of the video and then show you some of the other things I've done. I have since cleaned out all the pots. I've swapped these switches around because what I found in the demo video, which you'll see, I hadn't done this and obviously I didn't know. Notice how this piece of wire is really long and this piece of wire is really short. These were swapped around. In the demo, I found that this was the boost and this was the bright. Now, hang on, let me double check. No, this was the boost. This was the bright, except this switch was being boost and this one was being bright. So I've, instead of soldering them, taking the wires off and all that, I just undid the nuts and swapped the switches around. Job done. The next thing I did was I replaced the bias cap here for no particular reason. There was nothing wrong with this one. The only problem is that it's got both lugs, both legs on the bottom here, and it was kind of dangling around. This is a lot more secure. So happy for that to sit there. I also tidied up this resistor that was kind of dangling around with it. So I've shortened the leads and I've also dressed them with some heat shrink so it doesn't make any contact with anything else around there. Apart from that, this thing is now pretty much almost done. Going to replace the resistors here and this burnt resistor here. It looks like this is a 820 ohm maybe. And this one's a 80 ohm, so quite small. I had a look, because it looks like these are modifications. I had a look at the board underneath it, and there's nothing there. You know what, I'm going to leave it. The amp is sounding great as it is, so I'm just going to leave them there. But I am going to replace them. I'm going to put proper ones in. These electrolytics, I had plans on changing them. The problem is they've A, been changed before, B, they're actually running fine. And they're low voltage. Generally with the low voltage ones like this, you don't have to worry too much about them. But look, if I was being pedantic, I would change them. The reality is they're okay. They tested fine. So I'm going to leave them. Now I'm going to cut to the video that I already did, which was me playing the amplifier and testing it out and testing the reverb and blah blah blah. So I'm going to say a pre/post thank you for watching. I'm going to fix up these resistors and put the amp back together and enjoy my stupid guitar playing. Alright folks, well here's the Rockit Super Sustain 130, all working, all up and running. Stick the bright switch on. Makes a huge difference in sound. Massive. You can hear that changing there. I don't know if that's coming through or not, but the boost doesn't do as much. The bright really, yeah, huge. Boost. That sounds more like the bright switch, to be honest. I wonder if these are wired the other way around. Get. You know what, I think these two are wired the wrong way around. So anyway, I'm going to pull the amp apart anyway, because I'm going to clean the pots, and I will swap these around. That is definitely boost. And this is definitely bright. It just seems like this amp keeps giving. Reverb. Yeah, check this out. No reverb. Reverb up to 5. Reverb up to 10. So, plenty of reverb there if you want it. Master volume sitting on about 7 right now. I can crank it all the way up. There's a tiny bit of hum. Actually, when I turn the volume of the guitar down, there's no hum at all. So this amp's pretty damn quiet. Volume. There's a tiny bit of hiss there. That's really negligible. I've heard better quality amps than this, if you could say, more modern and all that stuff, that don't have as much of a quiet noise floor as that. So that's pretty awesome. So look, I'm going to leave things there for now. Like I said, I'm going to swap these switches around, and I'm going to do a bit of a clean with the pots. And guess what? This amp will be put up for sale on the regular places: eBay, Reverb, Gumtree, Facebook Marketplace. Pretty much in mint condition.